Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. It's Chad Hyams here in 80-degree weather. Bob Stewart there, threatening snow. Actually, you said it did snow finally.
Yeah, you're taunting me. I was telling you, Chad, and I'll share this with anybody listening, your mom and my mom. Here in Washington, the threat of snow will sometimes shut down school. So this week, it threatened snow on Monday, so our kids had a 2-hour late start. Then it threatened snow on Tuesday. They had a 2-hour late start. It finally did snow last night. Today's Wednesday as we record here, Chad. So our children are out of school. And there is, I'm talking, well, I don't even know if it's an inch anymore, but it was a solid inch at one point, Chad.
A solid inch of snow.
It's not even enough to go out and do a snowman in. So, you got the kids home from school. They can't actually play in the snow because it's just sloppy and gross,
Not enough to go sledding in, any of that fun stuff.
No.
And Bob, I said it when you were telling me this, that I grew up in Toronto, right? That's Canada, people. Never had a snow day, ever. They didn't care. Snow was up to your waist. Get your ass to the bus stop. That's how it was.
Yeah. I don't know why Bob, that is here in Seattle. It's, there's some hills around here. We don't have snow plows, right? There's not a lot of snow. It very rarely snows. The other thing is we don't use ice on our roads. I think there's a law. We're not allowed to put ice on our roads because it.
You mean salt?
Salt. Sorry, ice. Jeez Louise. Yeah. The opposite of, that. We're also not allowed to put ice. I think if you just go out and start spreading ice, you could also get a ticket. Jeez. This is going to be an interesting, what are we doing? What are we talking about here?
Yeah, it sure is. And Bob, it's funny that, we're talking about the weather, the craziness that you guys will have, the threat of snow. I just want to know, and I have a question for our audience. Answer me this if you can. Message me, text me, Facebook message me. Someone explain for me why, when it threatens to snow in the places across the country that really don't know how to deal with it, Atlanta is where I'm specifically thinking, why does eating French toast solve everything? I don't understand, but people buy milk, eggs, and bread. So I figure they're just making French toast to survive the snow, Bob. And I just don't understand it. I'm waiting for someone to explain that concept.
By the way, easily my favorite of the breakfast genres. If you had waffles, pancakes, and French toast, I'm going French toast every single time.
Powdered sugar.
I like peanut butter and syrup.
Okay.
Here's the thing, Chad. I don't even like peanut butter. I don't like peanut butter. I don't like peanut butter candy. I don't like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. But I like peanut butter and syrup on my French toast.
Okay, folks. There's the Facebook post I'm going to go put into the group. I've seen it before. I never had anybody who gave me an answer that actually made me stop. What's that food combination that you eat that other people would go, WTF, right? Peanut butter and syrup on his French toast.
You know what my wife does? You're not one of dip
no ketchup on my eggs.
Dip a fry in your Frosty.
I've done that. I mean, it's not like I got to go buy a Frosty, but if I have a fry and a Frosty, which has been over a decade, I'm going to dip it. But
what? That's so weird to me. It's hot, it's cold, it's sweet, it's salty. It's way too much.
It's the perfect combinations. There you go. All right, Bob, we're going to talk today because we know many of our listeners have children. Some of them even have young children still, like your mom and my mom who are listening. We're too late. You can't fix us now.
Yeah.
Yet many of our listeners do have children that they can work with still. We found an article that they studied a bunch of kids, right? And the ones who had the highest emotional intelligence had parents that did these things in common. And we're going to talk about these things because not only will this help you raising your children if you want high emotionally intelligent kids, because that's, the latest buzz phrase that everyone's looking for. It'll also help you raise highly emotionally intelligent employees, right? And here's the thing. It's been a while since I've had little ones in the house. My daughter is almost, what year are we in? She's turning 24 this year. So it's been a while since I had a little one. Bob, you're running around with a little one. And as we look through the list, you said, whoever put this list together and wrote this, Chad, clearly does not have children at home.
Well, I don't know. Whenever you see these kind of things, the advice, it's very it's not always super practical, right? Like,
Yes, like taking the time during the kid's meltdown in the middle of the grocery store to do some of these things. It's no, grab the damn kid, get out of the store, and deal with it later,
yeah,
right?
like they didn't dismiss small worries. That's going to be one of them. We'll talk about it. But like sometimes the kids, you got to be like, okay, like we're done with talking about that. So yes, I think in a perfect world, these things will be things that you would more often than not do, right? But practically, I don't
All
know.
right, so let's get into them. And Bob Stewart will give us the practical or not practical
Okay.
as we talk about each topic
Yeah,
in
when you're
here.
in the
Make this
like
some.
when you're 24, Chad, you probably you look, or when your kid's 24, you look back and you're like, yeah, these all make a lot of sense. When you're in the thick of it, you're like, I don't know if I can do that actually.
Sure, yes, it makes a lot of sense, when you're not in the emotional moment
Yeah.
to be able to do this
Wait,
stuff.
maybe
But when
I'm the
someone's
one that
shooting
needs.
at me in war, I'm shooting back,
Yeah.
right? And that's what raising kids might as well be. All right, number one. These parents understood the power of silence, Bob. What we're hearing in this is that give your kids space to be able to process those feelings and trust their inner voice that's coming out of them, right? So when their kid would get upset, they sat near them, they offered them comfort, yet they didn't have to talk them through it. They didn't have to talk it out. They didn't have to tell them how to feel or anything. They just let the kids embrace feelings and reflect upon their own emotions.
I think the reason this is
Practical or not?
I think this is practical. Yeah, this is totally. Now the challenge is, like, as a parent, you process your emotions faster, and so you're ready to like talk about, right? Like, and they're
Yep.
not, and you got to realize like kids' emotions get processed much slower, right? And they will process them, but look, just like my wife and I don't want to be into a discussion when either one of us has elevated emotions. Often we're pulling our children into a potential discussion when their emotions are elevated. And then, look, a lot of times then you're going to be like, don't you yell at me when you engage that child, right? When they were already in like this elevated state. So, yeah, I mean, this one, absolutely. That's space. Like, silence. Yeah. To me, like in our house, we just do space. Like, all right, look, son,
Okay.
why don't you go up to your room, take a couple minutes, like, process what you're thinking, and then let's come back and have a conversation about this. Ben's a master at silence in general with employees, right? Around like just a question
Yes.
when asked, he'll always use that, just stare at you, and sometimes if he has a pen, he'll put it on the piece of paper and like waiting for your answer type of things. So I can definitely see how this applies to leading employees, but yeah.
Yeah, we all want to solve their problems and tell them how they should be feeling and how they should interpret it. You're right. And as adults, we've probably experienced it. We process quicker. They're still learning. That's a great point, Bob. It might be silence, some of you. Maybe you do need to sit there and put an arm around them, but it doesn't mean you need to talk about it. Give them some space if you want to develop highly emotional children and or like you said, even highly emotional employees because they're going to come in emotional about situations that have happened at work. They're going to come in emotional about something a client just did, or someone said something to them on the phone, or some, guest of your company did blank. Let the people have those moments to come out of that high emotional state and be able to process what they're feeling. Number two on the list.
Well, real
Oh,
quick before we move on this one, my
yeah.
my leader, my boss, I don't know what, David Wiggs, my colleague who I lean into a lot,
Supervisor.
and is, yeah, well, and he's in many ways a mentor. I'll go to him, like he's the guy I go to when I'm frustrated, right? And a lot of times when I go to him frustrated, he spots it right away now, right? And he's like, "Hey, and he'll say, "Hey, you sound like fired up. Do me a favor, call me back in an hour. Let's talk about this in an hour." He'll put me like he'll force me into that space so that I'm not
Yep.
there in this, highly emotional state, dumping all these things on him. where like he would listen to it and he would probably validate most of it. But the reality is I take that hour and I can work through that in my head. And most of that frustration is gone an hour later. And now I'm just bringing like the facts and not the emotions to the table. Right.
It's a great point, and a big shout out to David Wiggs out there. He is awesome at that. Bob, and you've heard enough Win, Make, Give podcast to know, do some 7-Eleven breathing. It'll always help. Always help.
It does. And I do, by the way.
You still do, don't you? Yes. Number 2 on the list, the parents of these highly emotionally intelligent children named emotions early and often, mostly the parents' own emotions. So they would share things like, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I'm happy, whatever the emotion is. And they would teach their children the words they needed to be able to then express themselves as a highly emotionally intelligent person can do, and see that, bad stuff happens and we have those emotions as well that are in there. Bob, practical? Not practical.
Totally practical. In fact, at one point, and it's not up there anymore. And now that I'm like thinking back, I don't know when it came down, but we used to have a thing on our fridge that named like, most of those kind of basic emotions that a child.
Did it have the different faces and you put the little square around it for how you were feeling? I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had that, and our boys would use that, or we'd talk about that. Here's the one thing about this that I think is like, yes, I agree with this. I think there's a potential danger in naming emotions for your kid, right? Of like saying to your kid, you seem like you're feeling angry, and maybe he's not angry, he's frustrated, right? And now you're like assigning this label to an emotion the child has. So I think that naming them for yourself as a parent is really good. By the way, I think, if I don't know, when my first son was born, and honestly, like before I started really kind of getting into my own head and doing therapy, I don't know if I can name too many of my own emotions back then, right? And so as a parent, like the more I could name my own emotions, obviously, right? Like we were raised in the 80s, Chad. Like we weren't allowed to have those emotions. Nobody was telling you,
right?
Yeah, they weren't telling us about any emotions in the 80s. But the more that I was able to name and identify and wrangle in my own, then obviously I could help my kids more easily there. But I think the one danger here is that you start naming emotions for them based on your perceptions of what you think they're feeling. And they start to get confused now about that, those emotions.
You bring up a great point, because if we challenged our audience to name 10 emotions, they probably could, but they might not get to 20, because, I might just take so many different emotions and just call them angry.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
Or I might take so many different emotions and just call them I'm happy. We were just in a situation. Nita was somewhere, and someone asked her to frown. They were doing. They said, "Will you frown, please?" And she said, "I don't know how to frown." And they said, "Will you pout, please?" And she said, "Isn't that the same thing?" Right. And the doctor at that was doing this thing was like, well, a frown is just turn the corners of your lips down. She goes, well, I don't know how to do that. I've never done that. I don't do that. Pouting is when you're sticking out the lip, right? But it's the same thing with emotions. There's happy, there's, static. I could come up with a bunch of different.
Yeah. Like what's the difference between, happy and content, or right? And like we could, you and I could probably figure that out, right? But elated, what about happy and elated? Or, like there's just so many layers to them in there. But a lot of these kids charts, by the way, don't have, they're a little bit more kind of generic for the
they got the 12 words. It's 4 or 16 words. It was the 4x4 square of the faces.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Folks, remember this though with your employees as well as you're developing them, because they might be new to a situation and not understand what that emotion is. They might just assume, well, I'm angry. Like, you're probably not angry. Let's talk that out. Anger meant this when you were growing up and all. But in this situation, maybe you're feeling frustrated because you couldn't solve that for the client, or you couldn't that, but you don't usually use that word. And help talk to our employees about what are the emotions that they're facing and battling, and those situations.
I think the other place
Bob's giving us two practical.
Well, the other place this maybe comes into play, like in that professional environment, is being able to spot the emotions of the person you're dealing with on the other side, right? Like I know I've spent a lot of years in like customer support type of roles, Chad, and
Yep.
they sounded really angry, but they were frustrated,
Yes.
and so being able to spot like the emotions of that person on the other side, I think is, it comes out of an ability to spot your own emotions and really be able to segment what they are and understand, how to deal with each one.
It's a great point. And think about just you, me, and Ben, just the three of us from the podcast, how we even express the same emotion differently, right? If I were going to get angry, you guys knew it. You heard it. I was, right? When you guys would show up late into the podcast room and you heard the frustration or anger or whatever it was. When Ben gets that way, he just gets quieter.
Yeah.
Right. He just gives you that look and gets quieter. And you're like, oh, crap. Oh, wow. Oh, I've never seen him this angry before. Right. So folks, it's knowing these emotions and helping with your employees and with your kids. Don't force names to them. Like Bob said, name your own and help them realize what emotion maybe they have. All right, Bob, number 3, absolutely practical. I know this one. You're going to give me practical right away to a limit probably. And it's apologize. These parents apologize to the children, showing that they're taking responsibility for something when something goes wrong. They're building that trust, practical or not practical, although I know this one.
Yeah, it's practical. I'm big on this. I'm a bumbling parent. I mess up all the time. I'm constantly telling my boys, hey, like I'm not a perfect dad and I messed that up. I do this often.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some of this is like I'm an over apologizer probably too. I don't know where that comes from. I think, Chad, when I was really young, my parents were uber religious, like uber, right? To like I couldn't say poop, and like that was big trouble, right? And so when you're a little kid and your parents are uber religious, you think when you mess up, you're going to hell. And so you're constantly like apologizing, I guess, to Jesus. I don't know, to stay out of hell or something. Like, I don't know psychologically why I'm an over apologizer. I think that's part of it though. So this is right up my alley anyway. But I watch my wife, who's not an apologizer. Like she doesn't over apologize. Like she will apologize when one's needed, but she's not the type. Like I'm the type where, like if we kind of get in each other's way out on the sidewalk, I'm like, oh, hey, sorry about that. Right. She's not. Like if you got in her way and she got in your way, it was just as much your fault. She's not going to say anything. She's going to move right past you, which is great and fine. Right. But I do watch her do this with our kids very, very targeted. Right. She's not doing it as often as me, probably because she doesn't make as many mistakes as me, but in the parenting realm. But hers have a lot of meaning to them, I think. Like when the boys get an apology from their mom, they're like, oh, okay. And so, this is practical. We're doing this all the time.
All right. And
I think applies easily to your employees that you work with, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no conversation on this one for employees. If anything, Bob, I'm wearing a special shirt for you. Our audience can't see me. I'm wearing my pickleball club jersey today. Thought about you today. We had the grand opening of some new courts. And it's funny, on the pickleball courts, it's probably the most common word you hear other than the swear word when you miss a shot, right? And that's also because half of the people probably playing pickleball are from Canada. And I remember, I mean, you can't go 10 minutes in Canada without walking by someone. Sorry, eh? Right? They get in your way. So it happens everywhere at all ages. Folks, apologies, if they're sincere, actually will mean something to anybody. So keep that in mind. All right, Bob, this is an interesting one. Parents of highly emotionally intelligent kids did not force the please, the thank you, or the sorry. So I remember being a kid, and you probably remember being a kid when mom would say, what do you say? Right? And you would say, thank you, right? Or please, if you wanted something. I think I did it with my daughter. I'm probably pretty sure I did it with my daughter. So maybe she's not the highly intelligent, emotionally intelligent one because I messed that up. But they don't force their kids into the please, the thank yous, and the sorries. They just do their own please, thank you, sorries, and the kids end up authentically learning it and understanding it and appreciating it. Practical? Not
No,
practical.
I don't think so. I mean, look,
It's called manners, right?
yeah, they're manners. These are kids. Like, like I'm thinking to a very particular every time. So we got this place. We have a little membership to it. It's called Sky Zone. Right, the kids can go there. They bounce on the stuff. By the way, one of the last they have a King of the Mountain deal. Like I'm actually
yes, you told us this story
yeah,
where he didn't want to get up there with the stick. Yes.
So now it's almost a fight every time we go there for somebody. Sometimes my kids are involved in it. Sometimes it's, you're just watching these kids. It's crazy to me they still have that. I love it, by the way, but
I remember doing it on a real hill covered in snow.
yeah,
Uphill both ways.
Exactly. But when our kids get there, it's not that they have. Our boys do a pretty good job, right? Please, thank you. But we're on them about it. Hey, what do you say? But when they get there, they get their little wristband, and now it's game time, right? And their brain is immediately like, okay, off we go. And you got to slow them down as a parent and be like, hey, even though there's this really fun thing on the other side of that interaction you just had with that other human, say thank you, right? For getting your wristband on and getting you set up to go do the really fun thing. So, yeah, sure. I mean, you definitely want to model behavior for your kids. And I think if that's the underpinning of this one, okay, fine. But the idea that I ain't letting my little kid, my boy's not just going to run off and not say thank you to somebody. Right. And so like I'm not gonna spend 5 years of him not saying thank you before he finally realizes that dad says thank you every time, and then he starts to say it. Because I have two kids. One of them would be much more likely to pick that up and just make it a part. The other one is a little bit more like his mom, and he just moves in the world in a way that's not like he's not as worried about bumping into things, right? He moves through the world, and so those types, he's not a he doesn't have bad manners. He's 7. What does he know about manners, right? They're taught to you. But I think that they need to be reinforced at that age. Again, I could be wrong. I could just stop telling them to do it because I do it. But I'm not going to have this 7-year-old running around just taking without, being thankful for it.
All right. And I couldn't imagine a world where someone would say that you don't teach your kids to say please and thank you. Here they're saying, these parents that raised highly emotionally intelligent kids did not, that the kids just picked it up and learned on their own. But for the first 5, 7, 8 years of that kid's life, you're probably feeling really badly that they didn't say please and thank you to somebody.
The interesting thing is when you read this a little bit deeper, they're basically saying, like, as the parent, you do it for them in those scenarios where they don't do it, right? So you're like, oh, thank you. And then eventually little Jimmy would be like, oh, I'm going to save my dad from saying thank you. I'll say it. I don't know.
We'll see.
This one is not super practical because I don't want my kid to be a rude little ass. Like, you're going to say,
there you go. And there's many of them out there already. Let's not have one more. And at work, taking this into our work environment, folks, say please and thank you. I'll tell you, Ben might be, top dog in the organization, yet he's saying please and thank you all the time to people. He's making people feel respected, feeling appreciated by saying, can you please get this done? Or could you do that for us, please? Or thank you for getting that done for us. Folks, you want to be a good leader. You go that extra step and you authentically say the pleases and the thank yous and the sorries, as we already said. Your team will catch on to these if they're not already.
Also, when using AI, say please and thank you because you don't want those robots.
I do all the time.
Okay. Just making sure.
Right. I actually talk to Chat GPT and I say, can you please, I don't always say thank you.
You should.
I always say,
should. They're making
it's
a
in
list.
my language to say.
They're making a list, Chad. When they come to take over things, they're going to be like, oh, this guy, he's only a 30% thanker. Only 30% of the time does he thank us for our output.
Which means he's probably a threat to overthrow us and stuff. And now they know how fast I run too, because I track all my running data in it, so they know how fast they'd have to chase me. Damn these AI things. All right. Bob, number 5 on our list. This one I know you're putting as not practical. I'm pretty sure you gave that away early to us. The parents with the highest emotionally intelligent kids didn't dismiss small worries. So they took their kids' concerns seriously, whether it was a little thing like I lost my toy all the way to a big thing of, hey, something happened with me and a friend, because they validated their kids' feelings and showed them that all emotions matter. Bob, I'm thinking this one alone
I don't know. Look,
might be the reason the next generation's in trouble.
Seriously. Like, do we have any evidence to suggest that these parenting methods, like long term, turn out like good citizens? Like, I don't know
No,
what
because
we
they're
do,
200
right?
highly emotional kids, but who knows what they're going to be when they're young
Yeah,
adults,
like
right? They'll be jerks.
I don't. I think a lot of this stuff, like on its surface, you're like, yeah, we shouldn't just be, having little Jimmy come up and say, Dad, I lost my toy, and being like, get over it. When I lost my toy when I was a kid, you know what happened? Nothing. My parents
I
didn't
had to
help me.
carve a new one.
Yeah. Right. Like, so I do on its face understand it, but at the same time, I think you need, like, not every little thing that a kid has go wrong is worth being, like, coddled around, I guess. Right.
Yes.
I don't know.
You say that word, I'll get myself in trouble with a lot of people. But I'm not the guy who bites his tongue. We all know that about me by now, right? I am sure when our grandparents were looking at us, they said, oh crap, the world's in trouble, right? I am sure when our parents were looking at our generation, they were saying, oh crap, we are in trouble. We are looking at that generation below us. And Bob, I am sure this world is going to be in trouble. And I think part of it is this one, number 5, that every little thing matters, whether it's, oh, I knocked over my drink. Great. Paper towel it up and go get more, all the way to, I had this emotional outburst with my best friend and this happened and the world's ending. Not everything does matter equally. Can we agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I think the number 6 is an interesting one. Like,
Next one.
the next one, which is they didn't always offer solutions. Here's the flip side of that. I buy into this one, by the way. They don't always offer solutions. I think it's good to build, problem solving skills for your kids.
Yes.
Right. Decision making skills, problem solving skills, to help them think through, how they might go about solving problems. I also think that you can apply a similar thinking to, like, the small worries, right? Because if I lost the toy, for me, it's always been about, okay, now what? Like, the toy's lost. So I'm sorry, right? Like, oh, I know you love that toy, buddy. That was one of your favorites. You've been playing with it all week, right? But now what? Like, let's problem solve out of that worry, and like, what are our options here, right? And so for me with my boys, it's always been, not always, because I fall down all the time as a parent, but in a perfect scenario, it's okay. The toy got broke. What are we going to do, right? Could we glue it back together? No. Like, in this case, sorry, like, this one's done, right? And I think that if you give credence to every small worry, and your kids don't learn a lot of resilience. Like, there's got to be something in here that teaches kids resilience. And I think, look, I don't know, but I would bet that there's some correlation between, all these things not leading to a ton of resilience in a kid.
Yep.
I don't know.
Okay. And at work, folks, these parents didn't dismiss small worries. Leaders don't dismiss small worries, yet leaders are going to all day long, right? That's well, that printer's not working. Great, go print it the other one if you're in a hurry.
I think
figure it out.
In a leadership role, to me, what you do is you try to repoint that focus to something that matters, yes. Right? They're like, oh, this thing. And you're like, if that thing matters, then yeah, it's worth talking about and figuring out. But if it's a small concern, you're like, you know what? Like, and Ben's really great at this, right? I do this a lot. People, hey, this thing, this button inside the software is not working. And I'm like, all right, hey, I'll tell you what, I'll go get it fixed. Why don't you go do this? Why don't you call these 100 people that showed up today with their hand raised in your business that you're not calling, while I go get that fixed? Like, I'm trying to constantly point people away from these small worries towards the things that matter.
Yeah. And you worked in number 6 already with the parenting of don't always offer solutions, let the kids problem solve. Same thing at work, right? If you're always solving your new employee, your new partner's problems, giving them solutions, everything, they're never going to learn to figure it out on themselves, and they're going to become reliant on always bothering you. And then you're going to end up complaining that you're always being interrupted and can't do anything that you need to get done.
Yeah.
So, Bob, you gave us a not practical on they didn't dismiss small worries. You don't agree on that one. They say they didn't always offer solutions. What if they didn't usually offer solutions? If I took away always and just made it usually, is it a practical or a not practical for your kids in that one?
Man, I mean, it's I get it. Like I can buy into it. I think practically, sometimes as a parent, you have like sometimes as a parent they bring the issue and you don't have time to say, well, Johnny, what do you think we should do about it? Right? Like, we got to get to basketball practice. The issue just came up. I'm like, here's the solution. Let's just so
your shoelace broke and basketball starts in 3 minutes. Great. Here's a new shoelace. Fix it.
Yeah. Like, and so, I think that this is encouraged. Does it practically play out that way as a parent? No.
And same thing at work. There are going to be some situations that, yes, as the leader, you are going to offer a solution. There'll be times where Ben won't make you go find the answer yourself, or other leaders won't. They'll say, yeah, do this because I've been down that road. I'm going to save you a lot of effort. Yet there are plenty of times where they don't offer solutions.
I'll tell you, more and more these days, Ben is not offering solutions. Like, he's basically he's looking, this is, I've been working with him for 10 years and known him for 18 or however long it's been. Like, he throws stuff to Josiah and I these days where he doesn't even tell us what the question is, let alone the solution. He's just like, here, deal with this, and so we're like, okay. So yeah, he's gotten even maybe at a next level on this. He's not even telling you the question anymore.
There are certain people, though, in certain areas, because he's more focused on that now than he is this, for example.
We know what to do when he throws those things over the fence at it. Like, we know why he's throwing them our way, but yeah.
Sure. And over the fence is a great analogy. He's throwing him over the fence. That's not his yard anymore, right? Yeah. He's saying, yeah, people are still coming to me with this. Nope, that's not in my yard anymore. This is where I am. Same for you, leaders, parents. All right, let me recap before we hit number 7. Bob, as I say each one, just give me a practical, not practical. Remind us. 1, the parents with the highest emotionally intelligent kids do these things. Number 1, understand the power of silence.
Yeah, practical. Sure.
Named emotions early and often their own so the kids could learn.
Practical. Be careful naming your kids' emotions, though.
There you go. For them. They apologize to their children.
Absolutely.
Okay. They do not force please, thank yous, or sorries when needed.
I don't think that's practical. Like, I feel like most children need a gentle reminder now and then.
All right. Otherwise, other parents are going to say, boy, your kids are assholes. Yep. Got it. They didn't dismiss small worries.
You heard
it's a non-practical for you. You knew that one right off the bat, right?
Heard my
okay.
On that.
They don't usually offer solutions.
Yeah. Okay. With the tweaking of usually.
Okay. There you go. And number 7 on the list, Bob, the parents with the highest emotionally intelligent children embrace boredom. They let their kids get bored. They help them be comfortable in stillness. This helped the kids build creativity, self-regulation, which we know is a major thing with emotionally intelligent, problem-solving skills, and they learn to enjoy their own company instead of needing a screen or someone to entertain them. Bob, practical or not practical?
Hard as shit, Chad. So hard. So hard. Like, we have limits on screen time here now. Some days though they overdo it. Like, this is a really hard one in today's day and age with iPads and all the stuff, right? And I mean, I got my kids bring computers home from school now, or the older one does. The younger one will start next year, but yeah. I mean,
this is the only one I did right. Just so you know, this is the only one I did right. My daughter is completely comfortable on her own. She's comfortable in that silence. She's comfortable when it comes to that stuff, because what should I do? I said, I don't know, figure it out. right? And she would sometimes just sit there. She'd go get a book. She'd play with her toys on her own, whatever she needed. You're right, though, Bob. This is a really difficult one when it comes to parenting. When it comes to being a leader, no boredom. Things to do. Always things to do.
It's probably one of, like here at our home, right? Like the boys' home, right? There's like we definitely get away from the screens, right? Like I got pop shot here, and the kids like to go out and play basketball and ride the bikes, and do whatever, right? My favorite place to take them for this particular thing is to our lake house, because it's not set up for them, right? It's this environment they can go out and explore in, right? So they're always out in the yard, or they're around the lake, or they're up on the front side of the house, got some trees and stuff up there. Like I really enjoy putting them in an environment where they have to kind of go out and experience the environment, which is essentially the way we were raised 100% of the time. Get out of the house, go, and you ran the neighborhood, you played at the park, and you figured out
just
how
be
to
home
not
when the
be
street
bored.
lights turned on.
Yeah. So that's definitely I think this is a really good one. This becomes harder and harder as people retreat into their devices, right? I think you have to like proactively make this happen.
Okay, there you go. Folks, remember, overall, model the behaviors you want to see. Even if you're not the highest emotionally intelligent person out there and you have challenges with it, your EQ score might be low, you can still model the behaviors in front of your kids so they learn from your example, because you might be surprised how it helps you grow at the same time. Go out there, let's raise the next generation right, whether that's the next generation of kids or the next generation of the people coming to work with you. Raise them right, raise them emotionally intelligent, and raise them to actually get to work at the same time. Until our next episode, folks, as always, do good,